Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at USAGlobalTV.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here at USA Global TV and Radio. We are thrilled to have you wherever you are in the world. I'm Dr. JACALYN KERBECK, and our show today is Food and Our Emotions. We are going to be exploring the pros and cons of international diets. And of course, I'm not here alone because what do I know about this? Nothing. We have our longevity strategist and expert with us, Mr. red.olaughlin. Let's welcome him, joining us from Texas. Hello.
Howdy, Dr. JACALYN. Another wonderful day in paradise here with you. And yes, we actually are looking forward to getting some rain today. First time. And well, I did a little thing the other day here in the Houston area. And we have 76 days since the end of May that temperatures have been 99 degrees or higher, almost a dozen above 105 degrees and one over 110. That's actual temperature, not heat factor. But when I looked at the rain, we've only had one day each month where we've had more than 0.1 inches of rain. And when I was downstairs a few minutes ago, I was looking at some storms headed our way and hopefully won't interfere with the broadcast today. It looks like we might actually get more than 0.1 inches of rain. So that's always exciting. So as we're talking about food, our emotions, sometimes the weather can give us an emotional uplift, or, you know, that continual doldrum of nothing but just 100-degree, triple digits every day can be also emotionally draining. Anyway, let's get back to the topic today, international diets. And we, Dr. JACALYN and I were talking about, well, what can we talk about here on the show that makes sense, that can add value, that gives people insights that they would not normally become aware of. And we talked recently about the Mediterranean diet, and we talked about Weight Watchers and South Beach and keto and a number of things. But one of the things that pops up is sometimes when we look at the Mediterranean diet, it's not really a diet, it's a lifestyle, but we use the terms diet. So if I'm looking at an Okinawan diet, it's really the lifestyle, just as if I'm talking about a Thai or Indian or Italian or French. The terminology is diet, but the reality is that's the way most of the people in those areas eat on a daily basis. Your thoughts, Dr. JACALYN?
Yeah, you bring up a great point, Red. And a question and comment really that I have is, my understanding is, because I love French food, I love going to Paris and south of France, but the French eat differently because they're having what I think are binge items, so to speak, which would be cheese, my favorite, bread, pasta, wine, all of it. But they have it in smaller portions, which is what you're always advocating for. So when we think about international diets, how important is it to keep in mind all the things that you are always educating us on about not drinking at the same time that you're eating, having a salad plate, all of those other things? Do people in other countries follow these customs as well?
Well, not exactly, because the culture there is different. You might be eating a lot more meals with family. It might be eating a lot later in the afternoon. It may be eating for a lot longer period of time. But sometimes when you have healthy foods, it's not a matter of the fact that I have 2 or 3 or 4 cups of pasta in front of me that I'm slurping down in 3 or 4 minutes. No, it's the taking your time. It's a non-stressing event. It's not a matter. Yeah, there are some that portion control is critical, but there's just so many different aspects of it, and we try to compensate here in the United States by well, if you do this, you can overcome that. If you do this, we can kind of fudge that one a little bit. But why don't we just kind of go into it? If you were to dial in your Google account, say healthy diets, what's going to come up? Well, it turns out that one of the healthiest diets out there right this minute is the Okinawan diet. It's, pretty much a plant-based diet, a lot of vegetables and potatoes, low in saturated fats and sugar. And when you think about Okinawa and Japan, we think about longevity, lower rates of chronic diseases. So that's kind of the focus that we have in that particular area. We've talked about the Mediterranean diet, and that emphasizes that heart healthy fats, your olive oils, your nuts, your high in fruits and vegetables, some level of whole grains and lean proteins. There is a link to a reduced risk of heart disease and better cognitive function. Sometimes they call it the French paradox, that you're high in saturated fats, but you're low in cardiovascular disease. But generally, that's kind of the way things run some places. And I don't think it because it's a diet, it's because that's the lifestyle that's been chosen over a long period of time. You have a Nordic diet, your Finland, Norway, Sweden, they focus primarily on local seasoned, sustainable food, your fatty fish, your whole grains, your berries more than anything else. And again, because of their choice of foods, there's a minimum amount of, or let's say a lower risk of obesity and certain kinds of chronic diseases. West African diet, again, different totally than that, because now we're looking at a more plant-based society, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, etc. Very little processed food in comparison to some of the other ones. Cost effective if you're living there, but if you're living somewhere else, not so. Now, we just talked very briefly about the French. They do, as a general rule, focus on smaller portions and more of a mindful eating. If you had to compare it to the United States, you sit there and you may have that croissant in front of you for a lot longer period of time than you would here in the United States. It's just that it's a different lifestyle, a mindset than we have anywhere else. Korean, again, another Asian option on that. You have a relative balance, I'm guessing, of vegetables, but you have a lot more fermented foods, leaner proteins. Because of the fermenting, now you have a higher intake of probiotics with your kimchi and your other fermented foods. Again, during most of our life, you're going to find the Korean diet probably does have a much higher reduction in obesity and heart-related diseases. Thai diet, for lack of a better word, more on your aromatic herbs and spices, fresh ingredients, a lot more vegetables, a lot of lean proteins. And in the big scheme of things, because of the way things are put together, probably a more ideal or more beneficial option for weight management. Now you jump over to the Italian side of things. You have whole grains, you got olive oil, you got a lot of fats, sugars, a lot of things there. They're linked to lower heart cardiovascular disease, very similar to the French. But again, I think if you're living there, that's a different environment than if you're saying, well, I'm going to just choose Italian and go crazy. Indian diet, again, similar with Thai and spices, your legumes, your vegetables. It can be affordable if you're living there, but sometimes you may have more difficulty finding things. I think you find a lot of vegetarian, vegan have a tendency to go in the Thai and or Indian options because of the food selections choices that they have. And the last one I'm going to cover today is a Mexican diet. Again, a lot of vegetables, beans, whole grains. Those are readily available in the United States, relatively affordable. And for many cases, you can't finish everything that's on the plate. So there's a lot of things there that are actually pretty good. Now, you might ask yourself the question, okay, fine, that's the good side of the equation. What about the bad? So, but before I go to that side of the equation, any specifics, Dr. JACALYN, that you might have on any of those individual countries that we talked about or areas, and what that particular diet may offer.
I really appreciate what you shared, Red. I'm thinking you mentioned also about the Japanese diet. I think that you said it's not cost effective. So if you are in the States and you're interested in incorporating any of these diets, how accessible is it to get these foods, and what does the cost look like to do so?
Well, if you have a Chinatown nearby, not too bad. You have a little Italy nearby, not too bad. You have a major area where there's a high population of Indian uh, foods, not too bad. If you live in a small town and you're looking for Indian food, you may not find any at all. However, the option of ordering a lot of these things online that didn't exist 10 years ago is there today. It's just a matter of, okay, I want this, I need this. Restaurants deliver a lot of stuff that they never used to do, primarily as a result of the pandemic. So you can get the finished meal already done, ready to roll in many places, depending on what the nature of their driving distance is. But if you're living in a relatively good size city, I think you probably have better luck, significantly better luck than if you live 100 miles away from a large city, just because of the infrastructure and what the local supply and demand dictates for that area. But otherwise, just trying to find something in your local grocery store. Yeah, they do have a lot of international foods, but maybe not the same level of same choices that you would have in the event you walk into a restaurant. So, but if I'm coming back and looking at, if I had to pick what are there any negatives, if any, with regard to any of these kinds of foods and groups? Well, if I go back to Okinawa, I think you've kind of nailed it on the head already. The availability outside of Japan or Okinawa, the availability just isn't there. And so we have to kind of find the ingredients where we can and make do. Mediterranean, I don't know that there's anything seriously difficult there. You may have sometimes a bit of a problem trying to find a good quality olive oil. Beyond that, I'm not sure there's a major issue with the disadvantage of that. Nordic diet, saying, almost all of these are going to be similar. You're just not getting the same ingredients choices because the cost to get it, to your area in Florida, my area in Texas, you may have a large Indian or Thai community. Yeah, they're available there because that's the supply and demand. But if you're 40 miles away from a large city, chances are not going to happen. So from almost all of these, it's going to be limited availability, even awareness in many cases as to what is even available. I'm noticing more and more African Indian grocery stores, particularly in the area that I live in, but there's a very high density of other cultures that live within the county that I'm in. French diet, again, high in saturated fats and calories, but I don't think if you're living there, it's not quite the same thing as I'm going to adopt an Italian or Indian or French diet. And because our bodies are built differently because we've been eating for decades on the standard American diet. Now we're changing over to something else. Our bodies haven't acclimated to the French or Italian or other ways of doing things. So Korean diet, again, the authenticity of being able to find what you're looking for. The fermented foods, sometimes because of the way they're done, they're a little bit higher in sodium. Not a big deal for some, but for a few people might be an issue. Now, some of the Thai diets, depending on how they're prepared, they might possibly be a little bit higher in some of the fats and sugars. But again, when you have choices and you know what and how the meal is prepared, that is really a non-issue, but it's something to be aware of if you're not. Again, the cost sometimes might be an issue trying to find some of the things that are available in the United States. Italian, high calorie, processed foods, just a lot of things there that we in the standard American diet kind of put our arms around and don't let go. Indian diet, again, you can talk about some of the higher calorie, higher density issues from the fats that they use. In some cases, it may be like the Korean or others that there's a certain preparation style, and maybe you need a certain kind of wok or a certain kind of burner that gives you that ability to create the foods that are exactly like what you get when you get in a restaurant. Make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely does make sense. And, Red, something else which I was wondering is if I have a freshly baked croissant, that's a lot better than if I have some prepackaged frozen croissant because of all the chemicals for the preservatives, right?
If you're buying something fresh right off of the person who's making it, if I'm down here and there's somebody's making corn tortillas, you're watching them while they're making them. I mean, everything is literally as you're waiting for something to be done. But if I'm pulling them out of the freezer, thawing them out, and I'm throwing them into the fryer, that's a little bit different because now you have to take it from point A to point B, so it's packaged. Now you have to take it and prepare it. Well, that package may not be in an ideal location with regard to refrigeration or storage or lights or whatever. And so now you need some preservatives in there in order to keep them looking good. You need something maybe for that extra mouth feel. So there might be some additional ingredients in there. So there's just a lot of things that when you have that fresh croissant, that just you bite into it, it smells good, it tastes good, versus something you buy in a package at a store, in a 8-pack or 12-pack or whatever. They're after 2 or 3 days, they're not quite the same. And generally speaking, if I'm as I'm going through Europe and I have a croissant, it's fresh. It's made that morning. It's not something that's been sitting around for a couple of days waiting for somebody to find it. And so, well, haven't heard that in a long time. A little bit of thunder outside. So if you see me disappear, I
I
will
don't
do
know
that
why.
as best I can. But regardless, it's
Does
one of
that mean
those.
that we can have two croissants then if they're fresh as opposed to one
Well,
frozen?
what is your rule on portion control? You're limiting yourself, at least as we've talked in the past, a small plate, a solid plate, and you don't go back for seconds. That's just the way things work. You focus on balancing what you want on that plate with regard to the nutrients, and then that's it. You walk away. So if you want to put 2 croissants on there and that's your meal, go for it. Your protein, your fat, you may have cheese on there, you may have butter, you may have other things on that croissant with regard to however you want to have it done. If you want to have bacon, egg, cheese, fine. If you want to have spaghetti on there, that's fine. Whatever you want on your croissant, you can do. But again, it's just put it on the plate. Once it's there, that's it. There's no replenishing anything. I think if you do that, you're going to start seeing portion control. Your body is going to start feeling that okay, I've taken in this much at a certain period of time. Boom, I'm full. It's actually going to communicate between your stomach and your brain. Hey, I have enough food in me. I don't need any more. You have a chemical reaction that actually goes on between your gut and your brain that says, I don't need any more. But a lot of times we ignore it. Our parents taught us eat, kids in China are starving, whatever it may happen to be, it doesn't matter. Or you get to a restaurant and you have so much food on the plate. I don't want to take it home. It tastes so good. I'm going to finish it. There's just so many things we've accustomed ourselves to. Whereas I can say, I go in, boom, I'm going to have half of this, taking the rest of it home. I already mentally adapt myself to say, I'm just going to have this and I'm going to be happy with it. But that's not the way we think when we walk in a restaurant. We want to have the ambiance. We want to have what they call it in German, gemütlich. Is it gemütlich? I think it's gemütlich. Anyway, it's the comfort and the coziness of the surroundings. You want to be able to enjoy not just the food, but the aroma, the people, the service, everything that's there. And even if you're eating at home, you don't want to fix something, sit down, watch the news, be upset with what's going on, and just shove everything in your mouth and not take the time to enjoy the textures that are there, the flavors, the aromas. There are so many things that we can enjoy with our eating that sometimes we don't even think about it. We just eat. And so as we're looking at things, we're trying to provide, awareness and education, not just only on what the food is there, but, oh, Dr. Jacqueline, do you realize that that croissant has, 13 toxins that if you had this in Paris, there would be 0 because they don't put all that extra stuff in to keep it looking nice and tasting well. So there's a lot to be said for fresh. There's a lot to be said for how things are prepared with regard to, do I prepare it in olive oil? Do I prepare it in coconut oil? Do I prepare it in butter? Do I prepare it in vegetable oil? Each one has an advantage depending on what you're looking at. So if I'm looking at, the Okinawan diet, for instance, I'm looking at something that portion control and mindful eating. We've talked about that very briefly earlier. But is that something that everybody can eat every single day of the week? I know that when I was in Italy, I could eat spaghetti 3 times a day for meals. I mean, but the people who were with me, yeah, they could do it for a day or 2, but that wasn't a lifestyle. For me, I want something that I can easily get, buy, fix. I'm a major proponent on being able to select what I want. I do a lot. In fact, I buy almost everything, but I want to buy something that's organic. I want to buy something that's fresh. I want to buy something that doesn't have any added anything to it at all that's going to disrupt any kind of or promote any kind of health issue. What about you, Dr. Jacqueline? You buy a lot of stuff, but I don't think you prepare a lot of things, do you?
Oh no, Red, you gave my secret away. I used to cook quite frequently, but I stopped for a period of time and I'm looking to get back into it maybe in the next month or so.
Next month or so.
This year, let's put it this year after a number of things have to take place. But I do enjoy cooking and entertaining. It's just been a while.
Well, I hope, and I truly do hope that you do have that opportunity uh, pop up on you or develop. It's one of those things. If you don't write it down, it doesn't happen. It's there because we're talking about it today. But as soon as we're going from this show to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, that intention, it was nice at the time. It sounded good, but it just, things have a tendency. Our life, our events, our distractions, uh, they take over. Uh, the Loving Spoonful has a song. You got to. Do you ever have to make up your mind? And one of the stanzas in there, one of the lyrics says, person got distracted by her older sister because there was a comparison between her and her older sister showed up. And anyway, and so I use that quite often at home. Marilyn will say something to me. I'll say, I got distracted by her older sister because it happens. You have no intention of the distraction, but something pops up that, okay. And now you're walking down a different road. So it's, if you want to have a party, let's say 3 months from now, send out some invites. Now you're on the hook. Now you're accountable. Is that a fair way of looking at it, Dr. Jacqueline?
Yes, that's a fair way of looking at it. There's certain things I have to do in order to be able to have the ability to do it. So I've got a plan. But thank you. I appreciate it.
But you know something? In order to have that meal with friends 3 months from now, you need to be able to cook it at least once, most likely twice, probably 3 times. Maybe the first time by yourself to say, yeah, I got everything, I can do it. And that the second time you have 1 or 2 people over, what can I do better? So anyway, there are a lot of ways to make that special evening even more special because you've had a chance to go out and practice it more than once. By the time people sit down and you have fresh baked bread, whoa, that's kind of neat. Or you've made your own ghee or whatever it may happen to be that you're doing. Or you have a special dessert that is something that you've worked on and you just pull it out and boom, it's there. So lots and lots of things can be done, but sometimes you just have to do it a couple times in advance. But what I've seen is I'm looking at these international diets and I'm using the word diet really in the context of this is what they eat on a regular basis. This is not a diet that we think about in the United States. But compared to the United States and the standard American diet, what I'm seeing is these international cuisines incorporate a wider variety of ingredients. I think we see a lot more different kinds of fruits and vegetables, whole grains in some cases, various protein sources that we don't, they're available in the United States. We just don't go and look and find buffalo or something else that's out there. And so there's a more diverse collection of essential nutrients and vitamins and minerals that in the standard American diet we don't see. I think we see in the healthier cuisines around the world, they rely on healthier fats. We're talking about your olive oil, your coconut oil, your palm oil, your fish oil. Those are things that we see in the locations around the world that we don't see predominantly in the United States, especially when you go into a fast food restaurant or something else. They're there for mass production, cheap cost, get everything down. So if I'm looking at the oils, the fats that I'm eating, chances are the international cuisines are going to be healthier compared to the standard American diet. If I'm looking at that same comparison, I'm going to see more plant-based options from cuisines around the world than I'm going to see from what's available in my local store. So if I'm looking at packaged foods, I'm looking at probably more obesity, more kinds of chronic diseases, as opposed to the kinds of things. Now, you might bring up the point, Dr. JACALYN, well, in order to do that, I had to go buy a package of this or a can of that or a jar of that. Well, that's true. There are some things there, but they may not necessarily have the same level of toxins, of fats, of salt, of other things in their preservatives, of the issues that just make that tongue quality just so unctuous. Anyway, and I think from a lot of the cultural perspectives, we see things from your Thai or your Indian or your Japanese or Mexican that are local. It's native. People eat it all the time, but it's not the tradition in the United States. So we get a tradition here, a habit more than a tradition of this is what we eat. But if I'm in another place in Mexico, that's what I'm eating. Indian, same. Thai, same. Japanese, same. They all eat the same. But if I'm eating all the same kinds of foods and they're not healthy like they are in the standard American diet, then I have a problem. But if I'm eating something all the time that generally is fairly healthy, then I should expect less obesity, less diabetes, less cardiovascular disease. So those are the things that I expect to see on any kind of international diet. I'm looking at less processed foods. We've talked about this before on other shows about how the mid to late 70s processed foods became ultra processed foods, and the epidemic that we see today with obesity really started about 1976. And you start looking at the rate of increase over time. And that's really what we're seeing is the cause is that ultra processed foods that just have not only the higher calories, the higher salt, the higher sugar, but the toxins in there to keep everything looking and tasting and lasting a long time. Many of the international cuisines have portion control built into them just by the nature of what they're doing. Whereas on the standard American diet, yeah, I'll have seconds. If it's all I can eat, well, I'm gonna go back and eat some more. Now it's just that's the way we operate. It's a not only a habit, it's a mindset. If I'm going in to get all I can eat, I want to get my money's worth. I want to be able to eat as much as I can, feel full, leave, and that was a good meal. One of the things we do miss with the standard American diet is the social aspect of eating. Would you not agree, Dr. JACALYN?
Yes, I definitely agree. I think I shared this before. When I was growing up, dinner was a big time for our family to socialize, and my father would always say, "We're dining. This is a dining experience." Whereas sometimes people just eat quickly and then it's time to clean up and then that's the end. So I think I know for myself, I don't have that kind of life anymore where there's actual dining and, and socializing over food. I kind of miss that. It's a lot of fun, but I think you would typically eat more.
I was out yesterday with a friend. They took us out because three of us have birthdays within a week of each other. And the key that he had learned a long time ago, he says, I make sure that the appetizer arrives on the table before I order the main menu. Because he's had a problem in the past with the main food ends up on the table before the appetizer does for whatever reason. And that's kind of an interesting way to look at things, because if I'm ordering something, I want the appetizer to kind of pre-fill me to get me a little bit hungry. But then if I'm eating and I'm really chowing into everything, I don't have a need for that appetizer anymore because that time has passed. And so it got me thinking a little bit about, we order things. Okay, this is what I want for my appetizer, my drink, my bump, and I'll have this for dessert. And in reality, maybe we should just take that extra time. Because if I'm looking at social aspects of international cuisines, they're more centered around family style eating and social interaction, bonding, something that contributes more to a not only a healthy mindset, but more of a mental well-being. The aspect of sitting there, taking your time, maybe you're spending an hour. And that's one of the things I really and truly admire about the restaurants. I'm in France or Germany, it doesn't matter where I'm at, Okinawa, Japan. I can generally sit there and nobody's bugging me to get up and leave. If I'm sitting there and I have my croissant and I have a glass of wine and I'm there for an hour and they come by, okay, and they just go about their job. There's no insistence that I need that table and you're just sitting there. I love to people watch. I don't know if you do that or not, but you're sitting there and there's a big cathedral at the end of the block, and you're 3 or 4, 5, 6 stores away from it, and people are coming back and forth, and they got their everything. And it's just interesting to just sit down and just watch people go back and forth. Have you ever done that?
Yes, I love doing that. That's actually a lot of fun. I'd have to leave the house though to actually do it on a regular basis, but I used to like doing that. It's just interesting to observe people and just to realize that we're not alone. There's more than just what we're doing and what's important to us.
I know with the pandemic, they started putting more and more people outside because that met the legal requirement of being able to serve people. But when I was very young, there were not very many places outside other than Europe that you could actually sit outside in an area and eat. I'm in Europe now, wherever I'm at, and there are whole even larger than the restaurant outside. Of course, they have umbrellas for rain and whatever, but it's just not quite the same. I remember the first few times that I flew into Hawaii, and I'm in the military, and we're downtown, and there's chairs outside and dining outside, and you're watching people go through. They got their swimming stuff, and they're going to the beach, and they're surfing, they're whatever they're doing, and you're just kind of going like this the whole time instead of paying attention to your food. But you're there with other people, and we're all looking and commenting about what's going on. And if you look at whether it's Spanish or Italian or French, and they're sitting there and they're having a conversation with the family. There are only maybe 3 or 4 people at that table, but the experience of what's going on is more important. Now, we sit here in the United States. What do we have? We have the TV on in the background. We have this going on over here. We got to get done in a hurry because we have this coming on at 7 o'clock, whatever it may happen to be. Just a lot of aspects, social aspects that we're missing because that's the standard American way of doing things. So you can still have the standard American diet. Maybe you need to turn off the TV, leave the phones in the other room, and talk about Dr. JACALYN. What happened to you today? What's memorable? And then now you have a conversation. In having a conversation, you're slowing down your eating. You put your fork on the table. You chew what you have. Lots of things that we can do. Agree?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Another great episode, Red. Thank you. I'm thinking a future episode we could talk about kosher diets.
We can. I mean, one of the things that we haven't even we've talked a lot about the various aspects of that, but when you look at the international diets and a lot of the fresh stuff that's in there, automatically you have less sugar. So if you have less sugar, you're probably going to have less obesity. You're going to have less cardiovascular disease, less diabetes. And when you have those kinds of things, then whether it's Japanese or Mediterranean or whatever, the things that we see in the United States, the cancers, the diabetes, the obesity, they're there, but they're just not there at the same level. Now, some may argue from a sustainability perspective, international cuisines, because they're plant-based diets, they can be redone, they're sustainable. have a lower economic environmental impact. You know, that may very well be true. For some of us, that may be the main issue about what we're eating, but for others, it's unimportant. It doesn't matter. It's you're choosing what you want to eat, but you're not necessarily choosing the foods you want to eat to marry up and align with the health that you want 10, 20, 30 years from now. Your thought, Dr. Jacqueline?
Yeah, I think we have to be cognizant of the behaviors that we have today and then realize that we have to set ourselves up to have good behaviors and good decisions because it'll impact us when we get to be older, if we get to be older.
Well, we are going to get to be older. The question is, and my dad used to have this fear of dying, and I would always, not always, but occasionally I say, Dad, getting older is going to happen, but you don't want somebody changing your diaper for the last 10 years of your life. I think generally speaking, we don't want to be a burden on anybody else. When you're a burden on other people, it just doesn't feel right. And if we're choosing our lifestyle, and I'm using this as a generic of the foods we eat, the calories we eat, the nutrition that comes in, how balanced it is, level of exercise that we do, the level of stress management that we maintain. There's a lot of things that we can do on a regular basis that down the road, we're going to see the benefits of that. We may not see the benefit today or next week or next year, but we will see the benefits over time. And that's the part that's going to be important, because as we start training our choices now, our time to do what we need to do, and the interaction, social or otherwise, now we start seeing the benefits of being able to do things that your contemporaries, your peers cannot do. You know, maybe they can go on a fishing trip that you can't go on because you're in a wheelchair. Maybe they can do something, but I think that's part of life. My wife and I were talking about this the other day. You know, some people, they get married and they want to spend their money and go do everything because by the time they have kids and get everything going, it's going to be too late for them down the road. So they're going to enjoy their lives early. Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But again, if you maintain a good, healthy lifestyle, there should be no reasons why you can't go out and do things later on. My wife and I walked the Camino de Santiago when we were 70 years old. We both celebrated our birthdays on the Camino. For those who are not familiar with that, that's a 500-mile walk across Spain. We were doing roughly 18 miles a day for 30 days. And that was walking from one place to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And it's something that about 300,000 people do a year before the pandemic. I think it's almost getting back up to that same level, but it's something that a lot of people can't do. Oh, I'd love to do that, but I can't because of my knee, my back, my whatever. And so making those choices today, whether it's adapting more of an international cuisine 3 or 4 days a week versus a standard American diet 7 days a week, a lot of options are out there, and you are the person making that choice.
Excellent. Yes. Fantastic. Red, we're coming to the end of our show. So I'd love for you to share whatever your last thoughts are for today about international diets, and then also how people can reach you.
I think a lot of people love certain things. I love fried rice. It's one of my favorites. I love other kinds of Chinese food. I love Italian. I mean, there's no reason you can't have a good meal that comes from a different part of the world, but you can't have it 7 days in a row, because those are things that we start getting to be in a habit. And if it's good food, fine. But sometimes our choices are not as good as we think they are. So if you're doing something, look at what the nutritional balance is, the caloric intake, and make that as part of the decision process. You know, the taste, the social interaction, a lot of other things enter into that equation. So I think, yes, look at the foods you're eating, but assess them a little bit differently. Am I going to be eating the same thing 20 years from now? If I am, is there a healthier way of choosing the foods? Is there a healthier way of preparing the foods? Those are the things from this particular show, from food and our emotions, that we want to start out with awareness. That's the focus we're on right now. We have a little bit of education that goes into that, but it's awareness on the front end and then education as we're going through. I have a show coming up here very shortly called The Wise Ones, I believe in about 2 hours. And we're going to be talking today with Elva Trevino, kind of a fitness, mindfulness kind of person. Listened to her yesterday talk. She had a wonderful, interesting background. A lot of good information to share with regard to our lives and the decisions we make. And then we're in the middle of a long discussion on pain management, pain control on Talking Heads, which is 2 o'clock Central, 3 o'clock Eastern. And that'll be my last show today. And what else can we chat about here as we're closing out the show today, Dr. Jacqueline?
Just how people can reach you, please.
Okay. My preferred method is phone or email. My phone number is 281-687-1188. Again, 281-687-1188. My email, red, like the color, red, .olaughlin, OLAUGHLIN. So it's red.olaughlin, OLAUGHLIN, @gmail.com. That's the easiest email to reach me at. My website, red.olaughlin.com, is temporarily down. They promised to be back up Tuesday. I'm still waiting. So hopefully it'll be back up later today. But those are the two best ways, email and phone number, Dr. Jacqueline.
All right. Thank you very much, Red. Thanks for another fabulous episode. I appreciate it and look forward to seeing you later today.
I look forward to you seeing me later today.
Okay. Bye for now. Thank you, everyone, for watching on the live or the replay. We really do appreciate it. Please go over to our YouTube channel, which is USA Global TV and Radio, and click subscribe. We'll be right back with our next show, which is the Corner Bookstore. So please do join us for that. Our guest is CJ Peterson. Thank you. Bye for now.